Here are a few tricks you can use to add a little extra to your drum tracks. If you're a guitarist and don't quite know where to start with programming drums, I've made a video going over the basics that you can watch first, linked above. But if you already have some knowledge, these tips should help take your drums to the next level. Ghost notes can help add realism to your drums, plus they're a great way to enhance a simple groove. If you've never heard of a ghost note before, it's basically a very soft hit that almost feels more implied than properly audible. You can use these on all kinds of instruments. For drums, the most common pieces would be the snare and kick, though you can experiment with any part. To program these, trigger the same kit piece but turn the velocity down greatly. Anywhere from 1 to about 50 often works well. You can also use slightly different articulations if you want to add more randomization to your groove. To get started, take a very simple beat. In this example, I've got a kick on 1 and snare on 2 and 4, and the hi-hats play in a triplet pattern. From here, you can start adding in some ghost notes. As this groove uses triplets on the hi-hat, I felt like it might sound good to add some triplet ghost notes on the snare. If you don't know where to start, try drawing in a ghost note and moving it around on the grid until you find something you like. Do this bar by bar until you've filled out the whole section, but remember not to overdo things, as it can easily make a groove sound unnecessarily complicated. For my example, I've set the grid to 8th note triplets and just added in a few before the main snare hits. 2 quick ghost notes in bar 2 and 1 in bar 4 to keep things tasteful. I'll play the example without first and then with them added in. The next trick is to make use of multiple articulations in a single groove. Articulations are different ways of playing the same piece of a kit. This is especially useful for kit pieces that often sound more intricate, like hi-hats and cymbals. For instance, here are all the different articulations I can use on just the hi-hat. Mixing in different articulations adds more realism to your drum patterns, as you're not hearing just the same samples played back at different volumes. You're hearing different samples at different velocities, which mimics the sound of a real kit much better. If you're using a multi-sampled drum plugin, something like SugarpillProductions or GGD, you already get this when adjusting the velocity, but when it comes to things like overheads, it often works well to mix in different articulations as well. In this example, I'm alternating between 2 different hi-hat articulations. One is the very tip of the hi-hat, and the other is a tight closed hat. The tip articulation, which is played on D♯3, shown mostly in this creamy colour, is basically playing ghost notes throughout the groove, similar to what we discussed with the snare drum in the previous example. The second articulation, played on D3, alternates between hard hits programmed around 120 and medium soft hits between 50 and 100. This helps a harder hit sound less robotic because it's not just a single sample you're hearing each time, plus those ghost notes from the tip articulation add extra movement to the groove. If I didn't add any ghost notes or velocity variation, it would quickly sound robotic, which isn't always a bad thing. Sometimes that might suit your track. But for this one, I wanted a more human feel. I'll play the same part back first with all the hi-hats set to one single velocity, and then again with the varied levels. Adding percussion tracks can also make a massive difference to your drum sound and the overall feel of your song. Percussion often gets overlooked when you're starting out with programming, but it can really add a whole new dimension to your drum sound and groove. For example, in this track I'll play the full part, then take out the percussion, so you can hear what a big difference just one percussion track can make. You can really hear how the energy and perceived volume of the drums drops as soon as that percussion track is muted. This is partly because one layer, the tambourine, is augmenting the snare by layering an extra sound on top. It only plays on each snare hit. If I solo just the tambourine, notice how it adds a sharper edge to the snare, along with a touch of high-end shimmer to what would otherwise be a fairly dull, dry-sounding snare. The second layer is two shaker parts, playing the same rhythmic pattern and panned out to the sides, whereas the tambourine stays centered like the snare. This helps to add more movement to the very simple 8th note hi-hat pattern. If you're still struggling with drum programming, I've made a whole video going over the basics of where to get started, which you can watch by clicking this video on screen now.